I know I'm kind of short, so the front row might not be able to see me. But I want to start this session with a land acknowledgement. We are on the traditional lands of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi, as well as others, the Muscatine, the Fox, and the Maiamia. So let us have a brief moment of appreciation and acknowledgement for the people who have come before us. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the 2019 Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Capstone Symposium. This session will be the second year scholars giving their flash talks on their summer internships. And we have 4 broad categories. As you see here, agriculture and food systems, community engagement and education, data and land management, and water quality and management. Each scholar will get 5 minutes, so please hold your questions until after the flash talks, and you can go up to the scholar in question for your inquiry. Again, thanks so much, and I will give the floor to our first scholar to present, Emily Chang.
So good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, even with the beautiful weather outside. My name is Emily Chang. I'm a second-year Doris Duke Conservation Scholar, so it's my last year. And I'm also going to my 3rd year of undergrad here at U of M studying public health. So today I'll be presenting my flash talk titled Have Your Kale and Eat It Too, Bringing Home the Beets with Double Up Food Bucks. Cool. So this past summer, I was the outreach intern at a nonprofit called Fair Food Network, and that's based in Ann Arbor and Detroit. There's locations in 26 other states, I believe, so that's really awesome. My day-to-day task included answering the hotline, which was really cool to be able to help people, answering materials requests, so I sent out lots of packages, and this is my favorite part. I went to a lot of site visits and was able to talk to people in the community. So I'll just start off a little about who we are and what we do. So that's our motto, Growing the Good. The specific program I worked on was called Double Up Food Bucks, which primarily serves SNAP users. So SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's a federal aid program, also known as food stamps, that provides food purchasing assistance for low-income households. And so along that line, Double Up Food Bucks bolsters that purchasing power by providing matches to the SNAP amount of money that they spend on fresh produce. So as a quick example, if you go to the store or farmer's market and you spend $10 on apples, you can get $10 in food bucks back to spend on kale. So I think that's really awesome. So continuing with who we help and why we do it. So food is clearly very important to our mission. It's in the name after all, but excuse my rhetorical question, why food? So food exists beyond like a finished product in your hand or like on your dinner plate, but it's agriculture, environmental health, it's national and global security, and even more. Food is a network that connects everything. It's super important to the nexus of water, energy, climate, and it has posed and will continue to pose like very big challenges continuing on into the future across the world. So these are just some stats about our program. In 2018, we had $12,400,000 worth of sales for fruit and veggies in SNAP and Double Up Food Bucks. We reached 190,000 families who participate in SNAP, and also have benefited 54,000 plus farmers. So as you can see a bit, we operated off a triple bottom line model, and that not only do we strive to increase food access for families, but also farmers are able to receive new customers and loyal customers through the farmers markets, and also the community is able to retain money within its local economy. So just wrapping up a bit about what I learned and what I hope to take with me in the future. So healthy food means a healthy community. You have to nourish bodies in order to nourish the community they live in. And continuing on, I would like to be a better advocate for public health, personally, academically, professionally. And as I mentioned before, my favorite were visiting the sites. I really enjoy talking to people who have been impacted by our program, whether it be vendors or participants. So I'll take those lessons I learned and hope to be a better person, better advocate. the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program and the Doris Duke Charitable Fund, our beloved staff, Ema and Meg, and Dr. Taylor, who watches over us, the Fairview Network for hosting me over the summer, Angela Hojanaki, my mentor, for being patient with me, my Doris Duke Conservation Scholar friends, and also you, the audience, for listening. Thank you.
Good morning. Didn't expect you to say it back, sorry. I'm Alexis Hamilton, a rising senior at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, studying environmental science, and this is Growing More Than Just Food, an Urban Farm Experience. So, in 2 months, I was able to learn so much from Growing Hope about their farms, their programs, and their mission. Growing Hope fosters an equitable and sustainable local food system where all people are empowered to grow, buy, prepare, and eat nourishing food. And like it says in their name, they're growing hope, but as I came to realize, they were growing so much more. So, I love the day-to-day tasks that I learned on the farm. There were so many activities and a lot of things to learn, and I learned so much from my leaders, Charlotte and B. Hello, Charlotte. Hello, B. From seeding to weeding and harvesting, there was always something new to learn. It was amazing, often exhausting, the amount of work that fit into just one day. The Ypsilanti Farmers Market that was started by Growing Hope helped build the local food community, and in the back of that building houses the flower market that goes every Wednesday morning. And every Tuesday morning, I was able to harvest and learn how to pick for the flower market to sell with our flower intern, Abby. Hello, Abby. So, though I loved growing flowers at Growing Hope, one of our staple crops was community. So, volunteer days every Wednesday were a great way to get to know the people in Ypsilanti and the community that I was working to serve. And of course, it was always nice to have many extra hands for weeding. So my favorite program was the Home Vegetable Garden program. It focused on providing lower income residents the opportunity to have gardens and food to grow on their own. So I was able to help with the last installation of the season, one of the over 350 gardens that were installed in Ypsilanti, and it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. So we took like all of this plywood, loaded it into a truck. We shoveled a whole bunch of compost into the back bed of a truck. We took drills, we took seeds, we took seedlings, and we took it all to that community member's house, and we worked with them to build that garden with them in just it was really more like an hour and a half, like really quickly get it all started, and then a farm friend, a farm expert comes back and checks on them and makes sure like that things are growing well and things are going well, and just like checking in on them, because sometimes just starting the program isn't like enough. You have to kind of go back and help those people. So, of all the things that we're growing on the farm, one of the things that I believe was the most important were the teen leaders. So, these teens were truly hilarious, inspiring, and just overall really smart. And I loved seeing such a large group of POC from the community working and learning things that I wasn't able to learn until I got into school. So I'm really looking forward to see with this like leap, this head start that they have, learning about these things, where they go, because they were like really brilliant, and I'm really going to miss them. They ended up being like my little friends, my little cousins on the farm. So it was really hard saying goodbye to them yesterday. So, and last but not least, from the knowledge that Growing Hope has given me, I plan to grow forever. So building in my own community, which includes FAMU in every stop along the way, I plan to use the knowledge that I have now to support community efforts that are already in place and hopefully start a few along the way. So I would just like to take this moment to thank Growing Hope for having me this summer, and to thank Dr. Taylor and Ema, all of C's, and all of the Doris Duke team for this opportunity and support. And that is the end.
everyone. My name is Mia McPherson, and I intern at the farm at St. Joe. I'm a nursing student at Michigan State University, and I minor in sustainable agriculture. So I'm primarily interested in diet-related illnesses, food, sovereignty, and environmental justice. So the mission of the farm is to build community through food. During my internship, I participated with our CSA program. We have a farmer's market. I did daily farm maintenance and community engagement events. So this helped me apply what I've learned in the classroom to a real-life impact. So hospital-based farming models made possible by community benefit through the Affordable Care Act. Healthcare institutions have a unique opportunity to shape food and environmental policy and practices, which is why organizations such as Healthcare Without Harm and Practice Green Health advocate for healthcare organizations to implement sustainability. And this is from Healthcare Without Harm. So boxed in red is where the farm at St. Joe fits in. So they have a local impact. As I said before, they do things like farmers markets. So health equity refers to the equal opportunity for individuals to achieve optimal health. Our disconnect from food contributes to diet-related illnesses, loss of culture, and decreased self-determination. Community health care providers should organize to address this disconnect, which I believe the farm is active in doing so. A health equity and food justice lens should be utilized to examine how race, gender, class, and other social determinants affect our access to and relationships with food. And achieving food justice and health equity will require both institutional reform and community involvement. So while some may struggle with access to healthy food due to geographical location, financial constraints, or other barriers, education can be a prevailing issue. So this can look like not knowing how to purchase, store, or cook healthy foods, or just not living in an environment that promotes healthy eating habits. Food insecurity and malnutrition cannot be simply solved by providing food. Education is an integral component. So my internship project focused on our Produce to Patients program. We partnered with 9 clinicians, and we donate produce to them every week. So at some of these facilities, they do cooking demos, nutrition counseling, or assisting just with basic recipes. Last year, the Produce to Patients program served over 3,500 patients in Washtenaw County. So my task this summer was to create a booklet of information on our most common veggies, so how to store them, how to cook them, things like that. So this is me with one of my coworkers, Annika. I really enjoyed being on the farm, getting my hands dirty every day. I pretty much harvested everything in these pictures, so that was a really exciting time for me. As a nursing student, I'm really hoping to just go forward and probably influence policies or just continue working on different farms throughout the country. Thank you to Dr. Taylor, Ema, Meg, and the Doris Duke Foundation for this opportunity, and thank you to Amanda, my farm manager.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Hi. My name is Craig Freeland, and this summer I had the pleasure of working as an education intern at the Museum of Natural History. So my experience at the museum was broken down into 2 different components pretty much. I worked with Camp Explorations, which is a STEAM-themed camp that hosts students from the age of 4 all the way up to 12 between the months of June to August. The themes of the camp change every week, and they also change during the day because there's a morning and afternoon session. So the themes included animal superheroes, nature's toolbox, science explorations, and even more. Of the responsibilities included in this position, I was tasked with designing curriculum. So I actually designed pretty much the entire curriculum for animal superheroes. I facilitated activities. So just a couple of days ago, I was doing some animal yoga with some of the kids, and also supervising campers during pickup and drop-off time when there's the most traffic in the lower level lobby. I would say my biggest takeaway from this experience was that running a summer camp is hard, but it's an awesome experience if you cultivate a sense of community amongst your staff because they can make it go smoothly. The second component of my experience was working with the Investigate Lab, which is an interactive lab that's going to be opening up in November with the goal of helping visitors connect directly with science and scientists. The responsibilities that I had for this component were to design an activity for the lab because since it's not necessarily open yet, there's still programming that is being workshopped for it, or being prototyped for it rather. So I designed a workshop that was around the impacts of mining on Michigan's economy and environment to have students be able to fully conceptualize all of the impacts. And I would say that the biggest takeaway from this experience was that simple solutions really go a far way. It's hard to really conceptualize a budget and also other things like that when you're coming straight out of college when there's so many constraints put on your work. But it was really nice to have those barriers sort of be removed and have the assistance of Kevin Farmer and Brittany Burgess during this experience. So throughout the museum, there was professional development that I was experiencing because I was invited to camp staff meetings, which were facilitated by the camp director. And I got to see that community develop amongst the staff. And also I saw the assistant directors review the activities and discuss the future plans of activities that were coming up for the camp, which showed actually how much intentionality was put behind the experiences that they were putting forth for the summer camp. I also went to education communication staff meetings, which were facilitated by the assistant director of education, where we discussed museum feedback, project ideas, and also updates, since the museum has only been open in this building for this year, and the rest of the museum will be opening in November, pretty much. Additionally, I was able to attend one DEI meeting that happened this week, and it was all about accessibility of the museum, so it's important to see that those conversations are happening. And I was able to do one outreach event with Engineering Pathways, which helps lower income and students of color get into Michigan. And to wrap it up, I would like to acknowledge the Doris Duke Foundation, all of the staff at SEAS, including but not limited to Dr. Taylor, Ema, and Meg. I want to thank Brittany Burgess and Kevin Farmer, and I want to thank the camp staff and campers, of course, and last but not least, our beautiful 2 cohorts in our first and second years. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Carpenter. I am going into my senior year at Oberlin College, where I study environmental studies and comparative American studies, which kind of come together at environmental justice, which is my pathway. And this summer, I spent some time doing a lot of education and outreach work around Great Lakes science and conservation efforts, which is what I'm going to talk about now. So I was at the Michigan Sea Grant. They have offices all over the state. I was in the Ann Arbor office. And so the mission of Sea Grant is really to do education and outreach in order to benefit the environment, the economy, and quality of life in Michigan and Michigan's coastal communities. That's kind of a paraphrase of the mission statement. And so for me, this was really an opportunity to broaden my horizons because I am not done a whole lot of conservation-focused work in the past. My pathway is in environmental justice. And I also am not that familiar with the Great Lakes. I'm originally from the West Coast. I go to school in Ohio, but still definitely learning a lot about the lakes themselves and then also what they mean to the communities here. So I worked on 3 primary projects over the summer. The first is this Adopt a Sturgeon pilot program. The way that it works is it's going to be launching in August, I believe, is the plan. And local residents who are interested in sturgeon restoration in the area can go online and buy an adoption package where they will receive, among other things, a unique tag number associated with a specific sturgeon that will be released into the Saginaw Bay watershed. And so that sponsor can then keep up with the life of that sturgeon if it is in the future recaptured by researchers and its data is collected. The sponsors can then go online and kind of be invested in the life of this fish. It also supports a Sturgeon in the Classroom program, which is really cool and gives students in the area an opportunity to raise sturgeon in their classroom and then release them into the local watershed. So this program was an opportunity for me again. So I didn't know anything about sturgeon coming here. And in doing research into them, I learned a lot about not only the fish and how they live and where they live, but also why they matter so much to the work of Michigan Sea Grant and communities in Michigan, and also indigenous communities for whom the sturgeon was a significant fish. And so that was a cool opportunity for me to think about the people-centered focus in conservation and how those 2 things can come together. So coming out of that, I also have an interest in communications. I do some journalism at Oberlin. And so Sea Grant has this regular publication called Upwellings, which I had the opportunity to write an article for about the sturgeon restoration work that is happening in the Saginaw Bay area through this adoption program and the Sturgeon in the Classroom program. And that was, again, a really cool way for me to kind of bring these interests of mine together. And then also, I think, really indicative of the work of Sea Grant in the way that they do this really cool, really high-impact conservation work, but are really focused on making it accessible to the people that, who live in the communities that it is impacting. And there's a real focus on getting those communities actively involved and engaged in that work. And I think Upwellings is part of that. And so the third kind of main project that I worked on was also very people-focused, education-centered. Sea Grant provides these really cool online teaching resources for local teachers in the state from the elementary through the high school level. And these lessons are available online for free. Any teacher can download the materials and then have the ability to do some really cool educational work around Great Lakes science. There's tons of data, tons of spreadsheets that students can work with depending on kind of the level that they're at. And so I went through these materials, which have been online for a while, and some of the links had become out of date. Some of the documents needed to be replaced, and so I did a lot of that work to make sure that the lessons were up to date, were available and accessible. And that was also a really cool thing for me to be able to think about the impact that can have on students now and students in the future. And one of the things that I learned from the communications folks at Sea Grant is that this part of the website is one of the highest traffic areas of the website, because people use these materials. And I think that that's just such a cool way to, again, take science that's being done, really important science, and make it available to students and teachers and just the general public. So kind of my general thoughts and reflections coming to the end of my Doris Duke Fellowship. I feel like through this work I really continue to develop a sense of place and connection to this Great Lakes area, which I did not have, 3 years ago when I first came to Ohio, and I think that's a really powerful thing, and it's really important to me in my environmental work with my environmental justice background that I think about, like, why does environmental work matter to people? Why does conservation work matter to people? And so being able to be part of that was really impactful for me. I'd like to thank the staff at SEAS, especially Dr. Taylor, Meg, Ema, the program managers, and then at Sea Grant, I'd like to thank Dr. Catherine Rising, who I worked with this summer, Rhett Register, who I also worked with but has now moved on to Florida, Sea Grant, Geneva Langland, the rest of the Sea Grant staff, DDCSP cohort. Really enjoyed working with you all the past 2 summers, and thank you all for coming today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tiffany Pauls, and this summer I had the pleasure of working with the National Wildlife Federation and their Urban Initiatives program. So I'm going to show y'all how we went from the streets to the suites, doing the work we did this summer. So just a little bit of background on NWF and the Urban Initiatives program is that NWF was founded in 1936, and since then it has grown to become one of the largest nonprofits focused on conservation and the environment. But it wasn't until 2011 that the Midwest Urban Initiatives program was established, and this program was focused specifically in urban regions like Detroit, like Cleveland, Milwaukee, in communities of color and their issues and how they relate to their environment. In 2016, the program was elevated to a national status, spreading its reach, and one of my mentors, Simone Lightfoot, was named the director, and in 2019, I had the summer to work with them and with their communications coordinator. So my experience with Urban Initiatives, I helped essentially revamp their newsletter. There was a huge backlog of stories. They've done so much work, and the public deserves to see it. So the newsletter was actually published this past month, went out to over 1,000 people. And I had a part in formatting and seeing what narrative was going to be published. I also had the opportunity to travel to Cleveland, Ohio to experience River Rally, which is one of the largest conferences that kind of talks about how we can be better stewards and protectors of our waters. And through that, I got to talk and interact with people of color doing this kind of work, talk to them about urban initiatives, and in turn expand the audience that our message was reaching. I also had the opportunity to work with on other projects the communications team was working on, including their Great Lakes presidential platform. With the 2020 elections coming up and the debates in Detroit, like right around the corner, I had the opportunity to research all of the candidates, like views, seeing how they talk about the Great Lakes, how they talk about water on their social media, on their websites and platforms, so that we could create targeted content and questions for these candidates. I also had the opportunity to look at major news outlets to distinguish who NWF should be communicating with about their goals and their topics. And I also had the opportunity to attend my first NAACP conference and kind of talk to other youth who are interested in social justice and advocacy in the same way that I am. And it was through NWF and the advocacy of my mentors that I was able to do this. So I just wanted to take the time to say thank you to the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars, Dr. Taylor, Ema, and also Anna Brunner, my mentor, and Simone Lightfoot, who could not be here today. Thank you.
Can y'all hear me? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So my name is Christopher Hal Terry. I'm a rising senior at the University of Michigan with a focus in ecology and evolutionary biology. My voice is a little bit hoarse, so you'll have to bear with me. Thank you. And so this summer I worked at the Great Lakes Commission, which is an interstate agency that focuses on effective management of the Great Lakes in the Midwestern states and some parts of Canada. In particular, I worked with the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative, which is a collaborative that focuses on coordinating and collaborating with effective treatment of the invasive plants known as the Phragmites. And so what Phragmites are an invasive plant that is pretty spread throughout the Great Lakes and the surrounding regions, so they can also be found on like major highways and things like that. And on top of being an invasive species that essentially eliminates biodiversity in an ecosystem, they can also present hazards to people, such as fire hazards, and they also ruin like shorelines on beaches for recreational use. So that's what I started with. And so this was the initial, to highlight the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative. This was the initial website that I was working on. And what you can see here, there are a bunch of case studies and projects and programs being worked on with Phragmites throughout the Midwest. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to make this more accessible and easier to read for people who are coming to the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative's website to figure out how to take care of this invasive species. And to accomplish this and also make new case studies, I looked at government documents such as the Chicago Park District's management plan for a location called Big Marsh in Chicago, on top of visiting the Big Marsh to collect information on how effective the management was. And so with that information, I was able to create new case studies in this easier to read format that shows the progression, the background, and the different management techniques that each place used for Phragmites management. And so combining the old case studies with these new case studies that I've made, I was able to revamp the website into a more accessible and easier to approach method. So at the top, you can see that that's a map of all the different case studies spread throughout the Midwest. And for people who aren't like as comfortable with using a map, I also chose to include the case studies below as a grid to show a different picture and the name of the location and what management that was being there. So yeah. And so also looking into the future, I was also able to help with the enrollment of new sites through the Phragmites Adaptive Management Framework, which is where people can enroll their sites into this collaborative between all the people who are managing Phragmites in the Great Lakes and learn. And basically, this is a statistical model that accommodates different management techniques and can determine what the best management technique is for each site. And so this picture here is actually like a site that I went to at Oakland University. And the people on the right are people who are here to essentially learn how to take care of the Phragmites. Some of these people were like state agencies, but also we had homeowners show up because this is such a widespread problem. One more thing. And looking into the future, I hope to take this information about scientific communication and how to make it most easily accessible for people so that we can all learn from each other into my future work. So I'm actually doing an honors thesis on snail morphology right now, and not everyone knows everything about snails. I wish they did, but it's up to me to make sure that that information is easy to understand so that more people can learn about the snails. So yeah. And so these are my acknowledgements. I'd like to thank the Great Lakes Commission, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, U.S. Geological Survey. We coordinated together for some of those the Adaptive Management Framework trainings, Dr. Dorsita Taylor and DDCSP scholars and staff, and also in particular the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative, Elaine Ferrier, Kurt Kowalski, Samantha Stanton, Erica Denson, and Dan Engel. So thank you.
Good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon. My name is Danielle. I'm a rising senior at Arizona State University, and this summer I elevated women in the conservation movement with the National Wildlife Federation. So my main focus was the Women in Conservation Leadership Program. This program in particular looks to elevate and champion women within the conservation movement. So in this role, I helped create core content for the 3rd annual Women in Conservation Leadership Summit. I also interviewed participants who have participated in this program and curated a blog series highlighting their experiences within the environmental movement. In regard to core content, I began by curating a list of vocabulary resources in easily digestible language to help incoming participants kind of have a base foundation of important themes like environmental justice, intersectionality, diversity, equity, inclusion. From there, I also looked to rewrite the real history of the conservation movement, so ensuring that we're highlighting voices of women who really helped shape this movement, but maybe weren't traditionally represented in our history textbooks. And finally, I looked to update the website with resources like podcasts, articles, and partnering organizations to help give the public a better understanding of what diversity, equity, and inclusion can look like within the conservation arena. So one of my favorite projects this summer was working to create a blog series, which I've never done before, so this was a learning experience. And to do this, I interviewed a handful, about 12 participants from around the nation who are doing really awesome things in conservation. So on the screen behind me are a few excerpts from the interviews that I conducted, and I'll just go ahead and talk about some of the recurring themes that I was hearing in the conversations that I had. So one of them is this idea that as women we are expected to be really tough in professional settings and we have to be stern and strong. But what I learned from talking with these different women is that there is a lot of value in bringing compassion and empathy and kindness into our conversations, into our decision-making process, and into our work. Secondly, making sure that we have good balance in our work, so ensuring that we are taking time to actually enjoy these natural spaces as much as we are working to protect them. And yes, and finally, making sure that we are elevating all voices and that this movement is big and we need to work together to push it forward. And so moving forward this summer at the National Wildlife Federation, I really gained a deeper appreciation for the importance of communication within this field and how we can use communication to really shape how the movement is pushing forward. Secondly, interviewing the different women from around the nation really helped me envision my own future within conservation. A lot of my experience in the environmental movement thus far has been in the classroom, so my knowledge is pretty theoretical and conceptual, but this internship gave me the opportunity to really put it into practice and also see what's happening in the real world with conservation. And finally, within work environment, I learned that I very much value feeling welcomed, and I loved the sense of community that we had. At National Wildlife Federation, we actually eat lunch together every day, which I like that a lot. So moving forward, I want to pursue opportunities that create a safe space for me to grow and feel welcomed. So overall, I wanted to thank the National Wildlife Federation for hosting me, my mentors Anna and Elizabeth for helping me shape these projects and grow, and finally the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program for giving me this opportunity and showing me what I can do within conservation in the environment. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Michaela Davis. I am a recent graduate of DePaul University with a BA in Environmental Studies and a second-year Doris Duke Conservation Scholar. So I worked at NAP this summer, and my project was No Time for a Nap, Invasive Plant Management at Natural Area Preservation. So NAP was founded in 1993 with the express purpose and mission of protecting and restoring the city parks around Ann Arbor while also fostering an environmental ethic among its citizens. So most of the work that I did day to day was with the conservation crew in the highest priority areas of our parks. So the highest priority areas tend to be the highest quality. They have the largest number of native species and a great diversity of native species and the fewest number of invasives, which I know sounds counterintuitive. But you have the most to lose if these areas become degraded and overrun by invasives. So protect what you have and preserve what you have is kind of our motto. So the field crew actually does a lot of work involving like chainsawing, fallen trees, removal of hazards, trail maintenance, all that cool stuff, herbiciding. I have none of the qualifications to do any of that. So I mainly did hand pulling, which is exactly as it sounds. You go out, you look for stuff that's not supposed to be there, you pull it out and put it in a bag to be composted. So this tends to work best for plants with shallow roots and immature seeds. If you pull stuff that has mature seeds, what you're actually doing is basically shaking seeds all over the place and spreading it around, which means that you have done your job awfully. I also got to do some brush cutting and trail maintenance using hand tools like small saws and loppers, which was fun. I was mainly cutting back woody invasive vegetation like honeysuckle and buckthorn. They tend to form these really thick hedges that are just not pleasant to look at, they're not pleasant to walk through, so it was really important to make sure that residents actually want to use the parks, that we remove all that stuff. We also used it to open and close trails, so if a trail becomes eroded, then you have to close it down and open up a new one. So we did a lot of that. We work rain or shine because invasives do not care what the weather is. So I am clearly modeling the rain gear provided by NAP, and we had to go out in this whenever possible. So it was pretty fun. I got very wet. Community engagement is also really important to NAP's work because almost a third of all the work done in the parks is actually done by volunteers, and they do this through a combination of private and public work days. I mainly observe the private work days done in partnership with the YVC, or the Youth Volunteer Corps, in which groups of about 10 to 15 kids, ages 11 to 17, would come and help us do projects. So in the picture on the left of the screen, we actually built the stairs that those kids are standing on and had removed a ton of buckthorn. You couldn't see any sunlight before. And then in the prairie pictures, we're just removing tons and tons of knapweed. I also did professional development at least once a week. So this involved several things. Sometimes it was working with other organizations like creek observation with the Huron River Watershed Council. As you can see, I'm modeling their waders so you can wade through water. We also did a series of lunch and learns on different topics, so like the farming context in Washtenaw County, or how insects are being negatively affected by climate change, the insect apocalypse. We also did presentations by NAP staff, such as the importance of photo monitoring for restoration. I also got to accompany the ornithologist and herpetologist, respectively, on different days at NAP, and we went out and identified and looked for different species. Actually, all of the species pictured here were found in our parks, and birds, reptiles, and amphibians are really important indicators of the ecological health of our parks. They can sort of tell you if things are good or if things are bad and what you kind of need to do to try and manage it. So overall, my internship really demonstrated to me, one, the importance of the partnership between the public and municipal workers and private agents and organizations, and how important that is to maintaining public green spaces, but then also exactly how a restoration ecology organization can function, which I really appreciate. And I wanted to thank everyone at NAP, but especially Mike, Tina, and Amy, who is not here, sadly. I wanted to thank the DDCSP staff, Dr. Dorcita Taylor, and the Doris Duke Foundation.
Hi, everybody. So did you know that air quality monitors do not all have the same timestamp system? We didn't.
Hello, my name is Aaliyah Lusuegro, and I am a senior at Swarthmore College studying environmental studies on the pre-medicine track.
And my name is Jaslyn Marcos, and I'm a senior at DePaul University studying environmental studies with a concentration in sustainability.
This summer, we worked with the Healthy Stuff team at the Ecology Center in Ann Arbor.
Our summer was filled with a variety of different projects that needed varying skill sets.
From lab work to data cleanup to visiting the different air monitoring sites.
To learning about phthalates and the many different toxics in our everyday life.
In conjunction with Breathe Free Detroit, our primary project dealt with testing the reliability of different types of air quality monitors.
The long-term goals of the project are to inform the Detroit community about air monitoring and to garner support for the Ann Arbor Climate Action Plan.
Essentially, we served as the checks and balances for the data being collected.
We did this by conducting a variety of confirmation and validity tests with EPA reference data.
We also sought out different means of comparison, both visual and statistics intensive.
So each day was always different and called for us to use a lot of different skills and do multiple tasks at once.
The process of dealing with data isn't always a one-step process. It includes tackling cleanup, a lot of statistical analysis, figuring out how to represent it, and finally putting it all together.
We had a lot of freedom and power in coming up with our next steps or unique solutions to any issues that came up and in our daily work schedule.
Every day, we noticed the many partnerships that were the backbone of our projects, from concerned parents in DC to Detroiters who fought to shut the incinerator down.
Our technical skills with RStudio and Excel developed immensely.
We also learned about the immense focus on community that takes place in the nonprofit world.
Throughout our projects, we noticed the long-term relationships that had already existed, or the relationships that the Ecology Center was starting to build. Do you ever just cry when your box plot just looks like that?
Or when your data looks like nothing at all?
We did! Air quality data is not always a breath of fresh air, but that's a big part of why this experience was so rewarding.
This summer was one of growth, and we both learned a lot, but these things stood out the most.
I learned that asking for help can be beneficial and bring clarity to your work, and it is not a source of weakness, but a kind of community building.
And I learned that networking not only builds connections, but informs you of the many different layers in an organization. Networking is definitely a buzzword that can spark fear, but it comes down to the relationships that we build in the workplace and in life.
So we wanted to say thank you to the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation and to the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program. A big shout out to Dr. Taylor for making this all realized. It's been a great 2 years, and to Ema and Meg.
And we definitely also want to take the time to thank you for the Ecology Center, especially our main supervisor, Jeff Gerhardt, and also Jillian, Mike, and Becca, and Lauren.
And to our beautiful cohort for being there every step of the way, guys. Thank you so much.
Hello, good morning all. My name is Erica Perez, and I will be discussing my role as a GIS intern at the Mathai Botanical Gardens and Nichols Arboretum. What is GIS? GIS is a geographical information system that is computer-based, that analyzes, presents, manipulates geospatial data. And Matthew Nichols is the organization that I work with, and it's a nature conservancy that is dedicated to scientific research, education, and public enjoyment. So back in 2011, Matthew Nichols received a grant to initiate the ArcGIS project, which aimed to improve their data management and also create a central location where there's access to data called open source data. That led to the creation of the GIS Hub and the living database collections, which users can access and download information on the natural communities and the flora and fauna that live within Matthew Nichols. So my job mainly involved collecting information on big tree data. So what I defined as big trees were trees that had a diameter larger than 30 centimeters, that were 5 meters away from the walking trails and that are in fairly good condition. So I went out and using Collector for ArcGIS on my tablet, and went out, imported the maps beforehand, and walked around to find the best specimens to display on my story map, which is a very powerful GIS tool that I use to combine the visuals that I took of the tree specimens, incorporating interactive maps so viewers can view the locations of the tree specimens, and also text descriptions on some of the characteristics of some key identifying features of that tree, like the bark and the leaves. They have certain distinctive features. Yes, so that's what I did, and basically the internship impact was when we collect information on big trees. So big trees, they're important because they have genetics in them that make them grow bigger and make them live longer than other species. So they're much more resilient to the changing environment. So that may play a key role in the conservation management of forests later on in the future. And story maps in general is a great way to connect the public with information from the outdoors, even though they may not have that access. So how is this internship impactful towards my future goals? Well, I would love to continue working with geographical information systems to map out where there are areas that are more vulnerable to environmental toxins, continue to advocate for spatial equity, and also to help push policy that enables everyone to have access to a clean and healthy environment. And finally, I'd like to briefly thank my supervisors, Mike and Maricela, and the DDCSP staff for all their encouragement and support along my internship. And also my cohort. I feel like they've created an atmosphere for me to really thrive and grow, become the person who I am today. Just very honored, and thank you guys.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Samara Almonte. I am a recent graduate from Western Washington University, which occupies Coast Salish land, and I just graduated with a BA in Urban Planning and Sustainable Development with a focus in education and social justice. This summer, I was working with the Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner's Office on green infrastructure and water quality. So I primarily was working with their rain garden program, which is a really amazing program that monitors both public and private rain gardens. If you're not familiar with rain gardens are a type of garden that's in a bowl shape so that it can retain a lot more water, which helps with improving water quality since plants naturally filter the water and help with like stormwater management in addition to flash flooding. So as you've experienced now, probably within this month, we've had a lot of rain here in Michigan, and especially with a lot of like parks and parking lots and so forth, like there's not a lot of places for that water to go. So rain gardens really assist with that in a more natural way. And then Oh, sorry, I can't see it here anymore, so it confused me. But then in addition to that, I really help with educating folks on rain gardens and green infrastructure in general. If you're also not familiar with green infrastructure, it's just a way to be more sustainable in our urban spaces. And then in addition, I worked with the Rain Garden web map. So this is some of the work that I was doing when I was indoors, which was creating these fact sheets that really told a bigger picture of rain gardens. So it gave specifics on location, some of the native plants that were in rain gardens across Washington County. And they're going to go in a bigger database that can show where all these rain gardens are located. So if you ever needed to know more about rain gardens or other green infrastructure, it's completely free access to anyone. And you can also look up some native plants that you can add to your own gardens to not only increase native population, but also just help with water management. And then one of the parts that I really liked about this summer was the community engagement that came out of the Rain Garden program. So we worked with a lot of different volunteer groups, including the Give 365 volunteer group, which was part of the Parks and Recreation Department. And this is an Ann Arbor specific program, and it's such a good volunteer program because I saw people coming from different employees' offices, such as actually Varsity Apartments, where we've been staying over the summer. Their whole employers went and did some invasive species polling. We also had some youth come in, some people from different Greek systems come in, and so it was really beautiful to see all those volunteers. And then I also worked closely with some youth from the YMCA in work parties as part of their summer camp, and it was really fun to also teach them about rain gardens, do some nature walks with them. So the picture below is just me talking to them about this drama that was happening in the pond with some turtles. They were really into it. The turtles were fighting with the ducks. So it was just a really fun experience working with youth and the things that they get excited about. But again, just doing that in nature. And then we also worked with some stewards. So after folks go through the Rain Garden program and get certified, they can become stewards. And it just basically means they get an assigned rain garden that they can manage and help out with. And a lot of those folks were older folks, so I really liked the intergenerational learning and community aspect of this program. So you had youth working with some elders, doing rain garden work and just learning together. And then finally, just thinking about where I want to move forward. So as an urban planner, I like to intersect environmental justice with that work as well. And so that means looking at spatial justice as an environmental justice issue. And we really don't have to look too far away to think about water quality issues. We just have to look over at Flint and the issues that they've been having now for many years. And so when we think about green infrastructure and where that is going, we have to be very intentional about the communities that are in the areas where we're providing green infrastructure and how they're equitably distributed, because I believe water quality is a right for everyone, and therefore green infrastructure should also be implemented across spaces. However, I understand that urban planning is a field that is very much political, and the actions that people take can have political consequences. So when doing green infrastructure in different spaces, we also have to think about green gentrification, which is a new recent movement where you'll have a lot of affluent folks move into communities as they increase their green infrastructure and displace the communities that have been there historically. So I think with all this work, I just really want to take into mind that everyone should have rain gardens in their neighborhood, everyone should have other green infrastructure, but prioritize the community to lead those programs instead of just asking them to participate in those programs. And so I would just like to thank my amazing mentors, Katie and Rochelle, who's here today. I really enjoyed doing the work with them and learning so much about their background. Dr. Cedar Taylor, who helped me come to this program, and the rest of the DDCSP staff and C's community. And of course, my two cohorts. This work is always a collective. Therefore, we grow and we heal collectively for getting this work done. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Sam Bauer, and this summer I interned at the Huron River Watershed Council, and so my presentation is How to Protect a River in 8 Weeks. Okay, so the Huron River Watershed Council is a small nonprofit located in Ann Arbor, whose goal and mission is to protect and restore the river so it can be a valuable water resource now and for future generations. So my experience consisted of 3 parts. There was a fieldwork component, marketing component, and a social media component, and I'm going to talk about those right now. So here we are. Okay. So the first, the biggest project that I worked on was the geomorphology assessments around creeks and streams around the Huron River. And so for this, the other field interns and I would go through the different streams and assess how much erosion was happening and where it was located. So we took different measurements for that, such as bank height, which is the distance from the water to the top of the bank, the length, so how far that erosion was occurring, and also the root depth, so just how far the roots were going into the water. And then there were a lot of other measurements as well. The second thing that I did was stiltgrass mapping, so that just consisted of locating the invasive plant stiltgrass and different properties around the watershed and tagging them for subsequent removal later on. And then I also helped document an auto-sampler installation, so it's that machine right there. So that goes into a body of water, like a river or like a stream, and it will collect water samples to test for contamination. So what different nutrients are getting washed into the river from runoff, because stormwater runoff is a large source of non-point pollution in the Huron River. Some of my marketing activities were writing a blog post about when I got stung by a stinging nettle in the field, which made me appreciate being outside in nature. I also got to contribute my writing abilities to a campaign aimed at reducing the amount of pet waste in Honey Creek, because that's adding a lot of the bacteria E. coli to the water, which is pretty bad. And then the last thing was revising the And Us website page to make it more representative of Indigenous voices on the Huron River in history, and also just making it more representative of all the different ways humans have interacted with the river. And it will be revised by someone from the Indigenous community, just to make sure that correctly and accurately reflects those voices. For social media, I just updated the social media, no, I didn't update that. I researched the social media dashboard just to figure out what are the best ways to track important social media metrics. I updated the editorial calendar to make sure that there was a strong connection between what was posted across Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, and just documenting to make sure that those had been posted or what hadn't been posted. And last, I just selected high quality photos for use in outreach materials and for future communications efforts. And I want to have a special thanks to my supervisors, Anita Daly, Jason Frenzel, and Andrea Payne. They made the work environment really cheerful, and they were inspiring to work with. It showed me how dedicated people can be to protecting this valuable resource. I also want to thank Rachel Coral, who was an Environmental Fellows Program fellow. We shared many laughs together, and she also drove me to and from work every day, so I didn't have to walk in the heat. So I really enjoyed meeting her this summer, and the other field interns for being really great people and showing me the ropes in the field. Yeah, so in general, just thank you Huron River Watershed Council for welcoming me into your organization. I had a really good time, and I feel I learned a lot. And I'm interested now in learning how I can tie the fieldwork experiences to communication efforts in the future. Also, thank you to Dr. Taylor, Meg, and Ima, and the whole Doris Duke Charitable Foundation for making these opportunities possible for us, and to my fellow cohort members for just being beautiful people and making me feel so at home. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Ramirez, and I interned this summer at the Washtenaw Water Resource Commissioner's Office, doing spatial analysis on green infrastructure and working on rain gardens. So their mission is to protest surface water and the environment by providing storm water management and flood control through green garden infrastructure such as rain gardens. Just to clarify, green infrastructure is a network providing the ingredients for solving urban and climatic changes or challenges by building with nature. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, which is an application that can be used to store, manage, analyze, and map geographic data such as green infrastructure. Using the county's GIS system, I was able to map several detention basins in order to find where they are located in the county, identify new and old plant species, and to calculate its area. 16 drains in the county were also mapped in order to help find where exactly Japanese silkgrass monitoring should take place. In addition to this, I also designed 2 rain gardens for 2 different places, one being in Vets Park and the other in Lafarge Woods Preserve Nature Center. I found out that I enjoy planning, designing, envisioning something colorful and beautiful, such as a rain garden. Furthermore, maintaining a rain garden was also another component of my job. I, along with groups of volunteers, joined at rain garden locations to remove invasives, clean inlets, and cut edges in order to maintain rain gardens, make them look neat, keeping invasives from competing on natural resources with natives, and simply make them look amazing. After a rain garden workday, we would also take a nature walk and point out various animals or plants to the children, which sparked their curiosity. This is the start of biophilia, and this is what also gives me hope for the future. It is the children that have an interest in nature, ask questions about how rain gardens work, and are excited to help out nature by simply pulling out invasives in rain gardens. I think community engagement like the one that the county hosts is important because it brings people from different places together and creates a space to learn and bring awareness about the natural environment. I learned not only about how to incorporate the community to care about the environment, but also to consider where these services of incorporating a rain garden should be distributed. They should be distributed to not just one area, but to multiple areas where it spreads out evenly, because at the end of the day, rivers, streams, and nature in general connect to every part of the world. There are various connections from my internship and what I want to be in the future. I want to be a hydrologist and also focus on water accessibility in rural areas in and outside of North America. In my internship, I focused on green infrastructure such as rain gardens, which prevent floods by absorbing excess storm water and naturally removing pollutants from runoff, all while educating the community about it. Overall, this filtrates and keeps water clean in a sustainable way. That is the connection, keeping water clean in a sustainable way while letting a diverse and ethnic group of people know about it. And why is it important? Statistics like the one I'm going to share is another reason why I want to focus on water quality and accessibility. As of 2015, 663 million people, or 1 in 10 people, still drink from water from unprotected sources. Of the people drinking water from unprotected sources, 8 in 10 people live in rural areas of the world. Billions of people have gained access to water, but huge inequalities still remain that stop some people from having access to good, clean water, such as the gap between the richest and the poorest, and the whites and people of color. Water shouldn't be a commodity. It should be a basic human right. And to wrap this up, I want to give a special thanks to Katie Wojciechek for being patient, understanding, and helpful when showing me the ropes to her job, and the Washtenaw Water Resource Commissioner's Office for opening their doors to me and allowing me to learn how the county operates, and a special thanks to DDCSP for allowing these opportunities to come to realization. Thank you.
Give another big round of applause to the second. Y'all did so wonderfully. So they prepared very well and breezed through their presentation. So we have a few minutes for any questions that anyone has before lunch. Anyone? Don't all speak at once. Well, if there are no questions, if there are no questions, I will allow time for a brief break before lunch. And, you can go to the bathroom, chat with the scholars one-on-one. Lunch will be at 12:15 and in the first floor commons. And yes, thank you all so much.